Deku has revealed his new power level. 120% one for all is insane. The amount of destruction Deku has caused with his new power has reached new heights in My Hero Academia's universe. Deku continues to copy Luffy's flow.
He copied my whole fucking flow!
And the final quirk called Gear Shift has a backstory that has been ongoing for over 150 years. The story of One for All vs All for One is a century-long battle, and Deku wants all the smoke to end it swiftly within 5 minutes. Chapter 370 begins with a flashback going down memory lane. All for One faces off against the second user. We witness All for One shattering a bullet that is being fired at him from behind without even touching it. He claims the second user's Gear Shift quirk can only control small objects. According to All for One, he was nothing more than an insignificant insect with a quirk that was just a little nuisance. He lied again. Also, when he fought Bakugo and pictured the second user in his mind, he shat his pants. So...
what the fuck is this?
how did Bakugo going meow remind All for One of the second user when he states that the second user couldn't even use his quirk on himself?
I'm confused!
Well, my friends, it was his insecurities we mentioned last week. He hated that he almost lost to a normie despite being this super evil demon lord. And as the second user was almost able to make him feel defeated, he was reminded of the feeling.
You are technically correct.
Now, in my interpretation of the chapter, we can see All for One crying as he defeats the second user of One for All. This is because we understand that he loves his brother Yuichi, the first user, and he always wanted him by his side to support the dream they had when they used to read the comic books together to escape the reality that they were suffering from in the real world. All for One couldn't understand why his brother chose a measly fly over his blood brother, choosing to go against him, stopping him from achieving his dream.
Congratulations.
However, All for One can't fathom how freaking strong Deku has become with this quirk, or why he can see the ghost of Yuichi and the other users. That's where I come in, ladies and gentlemen. Let me explain. Welcome to the ABD class of Anime Bullshit Science. Today's lesson is One for All. Over the generations of its existence, One for All has marinated and grown stronger with each user. This is why Deku is the final user of One for All. Because he was quirkless, just like All Might, he could handle the power of the quirks. But due to the quirk singularity theory, the odds of another human being born quirkless is basically zero. Thus, the next user would likely be killed by One for All. However, because Deku can handle One for All, and now that the quirk has boosted Gear Shift's power, the understanding of how to use it has spread to each cell individually. Deku can literally bend the laws of physics while doing this, in combination with One for All's raw strength.
Oh my god!
This allows Deku to use 120% to perform quintuple Detroit Smash, which means he can now throw 5 120% punches in an instant. It's absolutely mind-boggling. To put this into perspective, Deku is now 1 punch faster than Muhammad Ali, the freaking GOAT, who did 12 punches in 2.8 seconds, equating to 4.2 punches per second. Yet, Deku is breaking reality, and it goes even further and beyond, as we can prove that he has surpassed Prime All Might. Prime All Might was regarded as the best and strongest hero in the entire world. Last week, we explained that injured All Might threw 300 punches in the span of 40 seconds in the anime, equating to 7.5 punches a second. The manga confirmed in chapter 304 that All Might mastered One for All to the point that he made the quirk his very own, having the perfect body to use 100% very quickly over the 40-year span he used the quirk. In comparison, within only a span of 1.5 years, Deku Deku has mastered 45%, but is using a combination of quirks to reach 120%. Deku is using much more force and resilience to be able to throw 5 punches in an instant. 120% has a higher recoil. Deku still has to master another 55% of One for All. Therefore, his speed will only increase twice as much if he exerts himself even further. The injured All Might stated that in his prime, he would have defeated the Nomu in 5 punches. But the thing is, Deku in chapter 369 has gone beyond that, as he would be able to do it in 1 punch, as his quintuple Detroit Smash is 5 120% punches in an instant, making his punching speed 5 times faster than prime All Might. Now you're probably wondering, how much force is Deku using to create a crater in the ground, smashing All for One into it? Just look at this panel. It's like a meteor impacted the ground, right? Well, those with the notification bell on will already know that we scaled Deku's first few feats by proving that he is tanking a huge pressure above 10 G-forces, where even a highly trained human would not be able to withstand, instead being inflicted with permanent damage or death. This is because of the infinite speed Deku is traversing at. Chapter 370 confirmed the second user's gear shift's functionality, as it can add velocity and speed to everything it touches, including himself over and over again, stacking a number of times. The second further states, due to the supernatural phenomena of his quirk, anything that gains velocity will not be affected by inertia, which is a property of matter that causes the said matter to resist changes in velocity. Basically, inertia is the resistance an object has to change in its state of motion, and the amount of inertia that an object possesses is usually proportional to its mass. However, with Deku's new quirk, the velocity added ignores all of that. That's why it breaks physics. This means there's no limit to what velocity can be added to a touch object, including Deku himself. The only limit will truly be how many times he applies his quirk to it. This quirk isn't setting a new speed for the touched object, rather it's exponentially increasing velocity to it, where the addition is multiplied with the increase of Deku's transmission gear. Math. To put things into perspective, Deku can keep adding velocity to infinity. Obviously, he won't be able to physically handle that, as the increase of speed will increase the G-force that he will experience. But from this, we can speculate the speed Deku is moving at. This outburst of explosive force sent Deku flying off like a Beyblade high on gamer subs before coming back in for another strike on All for One. All for One states how Deku is moving faster than before, and that his eyes can't even keep up. And so, I just want to remind you that Deku before this fight was even faster than a sniper bullet. In chapter 315, against Lady Nagant, we already know Deku could achieve such speeds without the gear shift quirk even being needed, and it wasn't revealed. He was able to achieve a pseudo 100% by utilizing Black Whip to rotate around the buildings, creating a central frugal force, adding to his 45% One for All with built up kinetic energy from his Vargin quirk. A normal sniper bullet travels around 1700 miles per hour, which means Deku went even faster to save Overhaul in time. This is lowballing the speed, since Lady Nagant's gun was her literal quirk and was known to be the best sniper in the entire world. But now, Deku's power level has evolved since then, as he doesn't require such a maneuver. Instead, gear shift allows him to achieve such a speed with ease. So, for example, in the case of a football being invisible to the human eye, as All for One states he can't even see Deku anymore, the ball would need to cross 70 meters in 1/250th of a second. That's 38,146 miles per hour. This means Deku could be moving at Mach 50 and above at a minimum. With this speed, Deku is effectively creating unlimited kinetic energy for free by anime bullshit science and logic, right? Proving that he is going above normal human standards and he is a superhero after all. This chapter was Adding the cherry on top, in chapter 315, the third one for all user highlights how fast Deku is learning to master the quirk. As before, Deku was switching between his multiple quirks, using them in rapid succession, and as a result, his processing wasn't able to keep up. This isn't the case anymore against All For One. His power level has soared beyond this, and that's why chapter 369 states his power can bend the law of physics. We learned that Deku was advised by Endeavor on how to perform multiple actions at once. Horikoshi used it to foreshadow the big reveal of Gear Shift, as Endeavor gave a human driving a car as an example, where in the beginning, we don't know how to drive, but we eventually make it second nature while changing gears or steering, using multiple functions in our brain at once. But now that we have covered Deku's speed, what about the giant crater that Deku has created, smashing All For One 5 times at once? Let's scale it. In chapter 369, Deku proceeds to fight All For One and smashes him about. His punch causes a crater that scales quite large. A normal human, no matter how strong or how fast, will not be able to survive the force needed to cause a crater, for God's sake. A human body at terminal velocity, which means it's free falling in 1g, is going to hit harder than a human body can survive, and it would still not make much of a dent on the ground, let alone a crater. It would be instant death for the person. So you've got basically two ways to make a crater. Number one, move very fast, or number two, be very heavy. Force of impact is mass of the object times acceleration. To calculate the acceleration Deku sent All For One flying at, we have to do the change of velocity divided by the time it took for that change to happen. With Gear Shift, Deku can literally add instant velocity in a second, meaning if Deku is indeed pushing a velocity of Mach 100 with his punch, that would give us an acceleration of 76,120 meters per second squared. We know All For One likely weighs at least 130 kilos with all the enhancements he received as he evolved with caged hands all over his body. This would mean the force Deku produced was over 9,896 kilonewtons, or a kinetic energy of, well, this on your screen right now, or 18.3 tons of TNT. This would be 9.5 atomic bombs. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Deku is that OP. His punches have become atomic bombs. The crater in the ground Deku made would prove this amount of force to some degree, which showcases once again how much stronger Deku is in comparison to All Might, let alone the other cast of characters that are literal flies and are irrelevant now. Horikoshi has made Deku match yet another feat All Might has done, to highlight that he is the new symbol of peace. All Might did a similar feat in season 2, where his one for all punch against All For One also created a crater and a tornado. However, I'm just saying, Deku's crater is bigger than All Might's.
That's what she said.
All Might was pretty powerful, being able to go around Mach 29 at his peak speed. He was an OP person that, if he exerted himself at full power, could achieve ridiculous amounts of power, and his punches were also like nukes. But as you can see, Deku has surpassed that. As the battle continues, All For One uses Deku's previous attack to predict his next move, so that he can counter accordingly. But because Deku is completely broken, his Danger Sense quirk activates, warning him of All For One's plan. This gives Deku the chance to change into first gear and slow himself down before Shigaraki can hit him. As we stated earlier, he doesn't get affected by inertia, receiving no recoil from the kickback of moving so fast and the force he's using. It's completely busted and broke physics. Deku proceeds to use Smokescreen and Float to get out of the way, pulling Shigaraki up with him using Black Whip. Deku then winds up his next attack using the power he accumulated with Far-Jin from his quintuple Detroit Smash, combining it with the second's Overdrive. This is the first time in the series that Deku has utilized all the previous users' quirks in one fell swoop, and it was fire! The second user claims that All for One should be afraid of the will of the One for All users rather than their quirks, as Deku shouts that he will put an end to All for One so that he can harm nobody else, recalling Banjo's promise that he would be the one to finish it as One for All's final user. Deku unleashes his true power as he states he won't hold back. This blow to All for One's chest was so powerful that it causes a hole in his chest. Just look at it. The second user reminds Deku that he must remember his promise to Nana Shimura of saving her grandson Tenko, and that he cannot pass out just yet because this is when the actual action begins. If you want to understand all of Deku's 6 quirks and the full story of One for All, watch this video on your screen right now.